Jake Morrison stood in the command center deep inside Earth's main defense station and watched the screens with growing worry. 12 massive alien ships had just appeared near the moon, and they were not there for a friendly visit. The ships belonged to the Galactic Council, and Jake knew exactly why they had come. For 40 years, the Council had treated humans like children who needed constant watching. They told Earth what they could and could not do in space. They made humans pay heavy taxes in rare metals and gems. They stopped human ships from going too far from home. Anytime humans tried to explore new worlds or build better weapons, the Council would show up and destroy everything they had built. Jake looked at the communication screen as it came to life. A tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms appeared on the display. This was Commander Vex Kala of the Council fleet. The alien's voice was cold and showed no emotion when he spoke. People of Earth, you have 7 of your days to surrender all military ships and weapons to the Council. You will also allow us to build monitoring stations on all your worlds. If you refuse, we will take action to correct your behavior. The message ended, and Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had served in Earth's military for 20 years, and had seen what happened to other worlds that defied the Council. They were bombed until nothing was left alive. Their cities turned to ash and their people scattered across the galaxy as slaves. But Jake also knew something that the Council did not know. For 15 years, a secret project had been running in hidden labs around the solar system. Dr. Nathan Cross had been working with a team of Earth's best scientists to study captured alien technology. They had learned how to build weapons and ships that could match anything the Council had. Admiral Lisa Carter walked into the command center, and Jake could see the determination in her eyes. Lisa had lost her brother when the Council destroyed a human colony ship for going too far from Earth. She had been planning for this day ever since. Jake gathered the senior staff. It's time to activate Operation Blackout. Jake nodded and began sending coded messages to military commanders across the solar system. Operation Blackout was humanity's secret plan to fight back against the Council. For years, they had been preparing while pretending to be weak and helpless. In a lab on the far side of Mars, Dr. Nathan Cross received the activation signal. He looked at the weapons his team had created over the past decade. These were not ordinary bullets or missiles. They were smart weapons that could change and adapt during flight. When they hit alien shields, they would analyze the shield frequency and change their own structure to pass through. The Council had never seen anything like them before. Captain Amy Rodriguez was waiting in the asteroid belt with 50 ships that officially did not exist. Her fleet had been built in secret using materials from mining operations that the Council thought were just digging for common metals. Each ship was equipped with the new adaptive weapons and shields that could shift frequency faster than alien sensors could track. On Europa, Colonel Ryan Blake checked the status of his stealth ships. These small, fast vessels had been sneaking around the solar system for months, attaching tiny spy devices to Council patrol ships. Every alien vessel in the area was now being watched and their weapon patterns recorded. The information was being sent to Dr. Cross, who used it to program the adaptive weapons. Back on Earth, President Caroline Johnson was meeting with the world leaders in an emergency session. The Council expected Earth to surrender, just like every other species had done before. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful farmers and miners. The Council thinks we are afraid of them, Caroline said to the group of leaders gathered in the secure bunker beneath the Capitol. They believe we will give up without a fight, just like the Altarians did 10 years ago. They are wrong. The Altarians had been a proud warrior race until the Council crushed them. Their world was now a prison camp where the survivors worked in mines for their alien masters. Caroline was determined that Earth would not share the same fate. Dr. Elena Garcia was analyzing data from the spy devices that Colonel Blake's ships had planted. The Council fleet was arranged in a standard intimidation pattern, designed to show overwhelming force. The aliens were so confident that they had not even raised their shields or charged their weapons. They expected Earth to surrender without firing a single shot. This gave humanity a huge advantage. The adaptive weapons would be most effective against targets that were not ready for combat. Elena sent a message to all human commanders telling them about the Council's relaxed defensive posture. General Paul Henderson was coordinating with resistance groups on worlds throughout the galaxy. Many species that seemed to accept Council rule were actually planning their own rebellions. They had been waiting for someone to make the first move against the alien overlords. Earth's fight would be the signal they needed to begin their own wars for freedom. As the hours passed, Jake watched the countdown timer on his screen. In 6 hours, Operation Blackout would begin, and humanity would either win its freedom or be destroyed completely. There was no middle ground with the Council. They did not accept surrender from species that had already defied them. The alien ships near the moon remained motionless, while their commanders waited for Earth's reply to their ultimatum. They had given similar ultimatums to hundreds of worlds over the centuries. Not once had a species chosen to fight back against impossible odds. But humans were different from other species in ways the Council had never understood. They were willing to risk everything for the chance to be free. They adapted faster than any other race, and they never gave up even when victory seemed impossible. Jake looked around the command center at his fellow officers. Each of them knew they might not survive the next 24 hours, but none of them showed fear. They had been preparing for this moment their entire careers. The Council had made one critical mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare instead of attacking immediately. Those 7 days would be enough time to complete the final preparations for Operation Blackout. When the attack began, the aliens would discover that their weakest enemy had become their most dangerous threat. General Paul Henderson sat in his office 3 levels underground and began sending out the coded messages that would start the most important deception in human history. Operation Blackout was not just about fighting the Council fleet near Earth. It was about making the aliens believe humanity was completely helpless while secretly preparing the largest coordinated attack ever attempted. Every major city on Earth began powering down their defensive systems right on schedule. Military bases shut off their radar and communications equipment. Government buildings lowered their security shields. To any observer, it looked like humanity was preparing to surrender without putting up any resistance at all. The Council ships near the moon detected the power reductions across Earth, and their commanders felt satisfied. Once again, they had intimidated a primitive species into submission without firing a single shot. High Arbiter Zex-9 prepared to land on Earth to accept humanity's formal surrender. What the Council did not know was that every power reduction was carefully planned. The defensive systems were not really offline. They were being rerouted through hidden networks that the aliens could not detect. The radar systems were still running, but now they were using quantum frequencies that Council sensors had never encountered. Before Dr. Elizabeth Reeves activated the quantum communication system from her laboratory in Antarctica. This network had taken 8 years to build and connected every human settlement, from the lunar colonies to the mining stations around Jupiter. The system used quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across any distance without using radio waves that aliens could intercept. The first message Elizabeth sent was simple, but it would change the course of galactic history. Phase 2 begins at 300 Greenwich Mean Time. All units prepare for coordinated strike. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth, but for every species that wants to be free. Captain Ryan Blake received the message on his stealth ship, hidden behind one of Saturn's moons. For weeks, his small fleet had been attaching tiny sensor devices to Council patrol ships throughout the solar system. The aliens had no idea they were being watched and studied by the very species they planned to enslave. The sensor data was amazing. Council ships used energy shields that had protected them for thousands of years, but the shields all operated on the same basic frequencies. Their weapons were powerful, but they fired in predictable patterns. Most importantly, the aliens had become lazy after centuries of easy victories. They did not bother to scan for threats because they believed no primitive species could challenge them. Ryan sent a status report back to Earth through the quantum network. All Council vessels are tagged and monitored, shield frequencies mapped, weapon patterns recorded. Enemy shows no awareness of surveillance, proceeding to attack positions. On Earth, High Arbiter Zex-9 landed at the United Nations building with only a small security detail. The alien was tall and crystalline with a body that looked like living diamond. Zex-9 had overseen the surrender of 47 species during a career spanning 3 centuries. The process was always the same. Show overwhelming force, then accept the inevitable capitulation. President Caroline Johnson met the alien at the entrance to the UN building. She had practiced this moment many times with her advisors. Caroline needed to appear defeated and frightened, while secretly coordinating humanity's counterattack through a hidden earpiece connected to the quantum network. "High Arbiter, your fleet is most impressive," Caroline said in a voice that trembled just enough to sound convincing. "Earth is prepared to discuss the terms of our compliance with Council authority." Zex-9 felt pleased with the humans' obvious fear. The crystalline alien had read reports about this species and their reputation for violence, but they seemed as weak as all the others when faced with superior technology. This would be another routine subjugation to add to the Council's long list of conquered worlds. Meanwhile, Captain Amy Rodriguez was moving her hidden fleet from the asteroid belt toward attack positions around the solar system. Her ships used a new type of stealth technology that bent light and gravity around their hulls, making them completely invisible to Council sensors. The 50-ship fleet had been built over 10 years using materials that the aliens thought were being used for peaceful mining operations. Each ship carried the adaptive weapons that Dr. Nathan Cross had developed. These were not ordinary missiles or energy beams. They were smart projectiles that could analyze their targets and change their molecular structure during flight. If they encountered energy shields, the weapons would shift frequency to pass through. If they hit armor plating, they would become dense metal penetrators. The Council had never faced weapons that could adapt in real time. Dr. Nathan Cross was making final adjustments to the weapon programming from his secret laboratory on the far side of Mars. The data from Ryan Blake's surveillance operation had given him detailed information about Council ship defenses. Cross was using this intelligence to pre-program the adaptive weapons with specific attack patterns for each type of alien vessel. "All weapon systems are loaded and ready," Cross reported through the quantum network. "Adaptive protocols are active. First wave will target shield generators. Second wave will hit weapon systems. Third wave will attack engines and command centers. Estimated time to disable enemy fleet is 4 hours." Back on Earth, Zex-9 was reading the surrender terms to President Johnson and the assembled world leaders. The High Arbiter spoke in a bored voice as if reciting from a script he had used countless times before. Earth would surrender all military equipment. Human space travel would be restricted to the inner solar system. All advanced technology would be turned over to Council inspectors. Caroline listened to the terms while secretly receiving updates through her earpiece. Colonel Henderson reported that resistance groups on 12 different worlds were ready to begin their own attacks the moment Earth struck the first blow. Dr. Garcia confirmed that the Council fleet was still relaxed and unprepared for combat. Admiral Carter announced that all human forces were in position and waiting for the final attack order. The most important update came from Dr. Reeves, who had been monitoring Council communications. The aliens were so confident in their victory that they had not even informed their homeworlds about the Earth operation. When the attack began, it would take hours for news to reach the Council's main fleet. By then, it would be too late to send reinforcements. Zex-9 noticed that some of the human leaders were glancing at their watches and checking small communication devices. The High Arbiter dismissed this as nervousness from primitive beings who had never encountered advanced alien technology before. The crystalline alien had no idea that the humans were coordinating the final preparations for the largest military operation in their species' history. As the formal surrender ceremony continued, Jake Morrison was watching countdown timers in the Earth Defense Command Center. Every system was ready. Every ship was in position. Every weapon was programmed and loaded. In 37 minutes, Operation Blackout would begin, and the galaxy would learn that humanity would never accept slavery. The Council had made their greatest mistake by giving Earth 7 days to prepare. They thought they were being merciful by allowing time for a peaceful surrender. Instead, they had given their most dangerous enemy exactly what they needed to mount an effective counterattack. In 28 minutes, the age of Council dominance would end, and the age of human defiance would begin. At exactly 300 Greenwich Mean Time, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Walsh pressed the activation button on his command console. and Operation Blackout began. From his hidden position behind Europa's ice fields, Danny watched as the attack signal went out instantly to every human military unit in the solar system through the quantum communication network. The first sign that something had gone wrong for the Council came when their sensor operators detected massive energy spikes throughout the solar system. Dozens of ships that should not have existed suddenly appeared on their screens as stealth fields deactivated. The humans had not surrendered. They had been preparing for war. Captain Amy Rodriguez led the first wave of human attack ships as they dropped their cloaking and accelerated toward the Council fleet near Earth's moon. Her flagship carried the prototype adaptive weapons that Dr. Nathan Cross had spent 15 years perfecting. These were not ordinary missiles, they were smart projectiles that could analyze and overcome any defense system in real time. The Council, Fleet Commander Vex Kala, stared at his tactical display in complete shock. Where there had been empty space moments before now showed 50 human warships approaching at incredible speed. The primitive species was not supposed to have faster than light travel or advanced weapons technology. Yet somehow they were mounting a coordinated attack using equipment that matched Council military standards. The first adaptive missiles reached the Council ships and began their deadly work. The weapons scanned the alien energy shields and instantly shifted their frequency to pass through the defensive barriers. Council shield technology had protected their fleets for 3,000 years, but now it was useless against projectiles that could rewrite their own physics during flight. Commander Sandra Price attacked the Council flagship from 3 different directions, using a tactic that no alien species had ever attempted. Her squadron split into small groups that approached the massive enemy ship from above, below, and both sides simultaneously. The Council had never faced an enemy willing to risk everything on such a dangerous maneuver. The flagship's weapons tried to target the human ships, but they were moving too fast and changing direction too frequently. Council gunners were trained to fight against large, slow-moving vessels, not small, agile fighters that darted around like angry insects. Within minutes, the flagship was taking hits from multiple directions, and its armor began to fail. On Earth, High Arbiter Zex-9 was still reading surrender terms to the human leaders when urgent messages started flooding his communication device. Council ships throughout the solar system were under attack by forces that should not have existed. The primitive humans were using advanced weapons and coordinated tactics that suggested years of secret preparation. President Caroline Johnson smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Through her hidden earpiece, she could hear reports from the battle as human forces engaged Council ships across the entire solar system. The aliens were caught completely off guard, and their formations were breaking apart under the unexpected assault. High Arbiter, I believe there has been a change in circumstances, Caroline said as she stood up from the conference table. Earth will not be surrendering today. Zex-9 tried to contact the Council fleet, but received only static and emergency signals. The crystalline alien had overseen 47 successful planetary conquests, but had never encountered a species that fought back after being given an ultimatum. This was completely outside his experience and training. Captain Ryan Blake emerged from stealth behind a Council destroyer that had been patrolling near Jupiter. The alien ship had no idea it was being stalked by a human vessel until adaptive torpedoes began tearing through its hull. Blake had been studying this particular ship for weeks and knew exactly where to hit it for maximum damage. The destroyer's captain sent desperate messages to the fleet command asking for instructions on how to fight against weapons that ignored their shields and armor. But the fleet command was dealing with its own problems as human attack ships swarmed around the Council flagship like angry hornets. Dr. Nathan Cross monitored the battle from his laboratory on Mars and felt amazed at how well the adaptive weapons were performing. Every projectile was learning from the previous hits and becoming more effective. The missiles that struck the second Council ship were already better at penetrating alien defenses than the ones that hit the first ship. The most shocking development came when human ships began attacking Council installations throughout the galaxy simultaneously. Resistance groups that had been hiding for decades suddenly revealed themselves and began coordinated strikes using weapons and intelligence provided by Earth's quantum network. General Paul Henderson coordinated these attacks from his command bunker deep beneath Earth's surface. Species that the Council thought were completely conquered were rising up with human support and advanced weapons. The Altarian resistance attacked their prison world. The Vegan underground sabotaged Council supply bases. Dozens of worlds that had seemed peaceful were suddenly in full revolt. Commander Vex Kala watched his fleet fall apart around him as human ships proved impossible to hit, and their weapons cut through Council defenses like they were made of paper. The flagship that had never taken damage in 3 centuries of service was listing badly and losing atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Captain Tim Roberts led his squadron against a Council battlecruiser that was trying to retreat toward the edge of the solar system. The alien ship was faster than the human vessels, but Roberts used a brilliant tactical maneuver to cut off its escape route. His adaptive torpedoes struck the cruiser's engines and left it drifting helplessly in space. The battle was not going according to any scenario the Council had ever planned for. Their military doctrine assumed that overwhelming technological superiority would force quick surrenders from primitive species. They had never developed tactics for fighting against an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their determination. Admiral Lisa Carter commanded the overall human fleet from her position near Earth's moon. She watched as Council ships tried to retreat, but found their escape routes blocked by human vessels that had been positioned for exactly this purpose. The aliens were trapped in a carefully planned ambush that had been years in the making. Within 6 hours, the Council fleet that had come to enslave Earth was either destroyed or surrendering. The ships that remained intact were sending distress signals and begging for mercy from an enemy they had dismissed as primitive savages just hours before High Arbiter X9 found himself a prisoner in the very building where he had expected to accept humanity's surrender. The crystalline alien stared at President Johnson with something approaching respect mixed with fear. No species had ever turned the tables on the Council so completely or so quickly. "How did you hide your true capabilities for so long?" X9 asked in a voice that no longer carried its previous arrogance. Caroline smiled and gestured toward the display screens, showing human ships throughout the solar system. "We learned from every species you conquered. We studied your tactics and technology. Most importantly, we never stopped believing that freedom was worth any risk." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than Council forces could contain it. Species that had lived under alien rule for centuries suddenly realized that the supposedly invincible overlords could be defeated. If primitive humans could destroy a Council fleet, then perhaps other conquered races could win their freedom as well. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of human defiance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. President Caroline Johnson stood before the quantum transmission array that would broadcast her message to every inhabited world in the galaxy. This was not just a speech to celebrate humanity's victory over the Council fleet. This was a declaration that would change the course of galactic civilization forever. The transmission began, and Caroline's voice reached billions of beings across thousands of star systems. Many of these species had never heard a human speak before. They knew Earth only as another conquered world that paid tribute to the Council like all the others. "Citizens of the galaxy, I am Caroline Johnson, representing the free planet Earth. Yesterday, your Council overlords came to our world demanding complete surrender. Today, their fleet lies destroyed in our solar system. But this message is not about our victory. It is about the lies you have been told for centuries." Dr. Elena Garcia activated the data transmission that would accompany Caroline's speech. Information flowed through the quantum network carrying proof of the Council's greatest secret. On worlds throughout the galaxy, beings watched in shock as evidence appeared on their screens, showing the systematic destruction of dozens of advanced species over the past 10,000 years. The records came from the Council's own archives captured during the attack on their flagship. Species after species had been eliminated not because they were dangerous, but because they showed signs of becoming too advanced or independent. The Council had presented themselves as peacekeepers, but they were actually preventing any competition to their authority. On the Vegan homeworld, resistance leader Kalaven watched the human broadcast with growing amazement. Her people had been told that the extinct Altarian Empire had destroyed itself in a civil war. Now she learned that Council forces had systematically bombed every Altarian world until nothing remained but radioactive wastelands. The peaceful surrender her people had chosen suddenly seemed like cowardice rather than wisdom. Colonel Marcus Thompson coordinated with newly revealed resistance movements across the galaxy as they emerged from hiding. The human victory had given them hope, and the leaked council records provided the motivation they needed. Species that had seemed content under alien rule were suddenly revealing decades of secret preparation for rebellion. The most shocking revelation came when the ancient Vorthan Empire sent a transmission from deep space announcing their survival. The Vorthans had been the Council's greatest rivals before their apparent extinction 2 centuries ago. Now they revealed that they had been hiding in dark space between galaxies, preserving their technology and culture, while waiting for the right moment to return. The Council told the galaxy that we were destroyed by our own ambitions, the Vorthan message declared. In truth, we recognized their true nature and chose exile over slavery. We have been waiting for someone to prove that the Council could be defeated. The humans of Earth have given us that proof. High Arbiter Zex-9 sat in his cell on Earth and listened to the broadcasts with growing horror. The carefully constructed image of Council benevolence was crumbling as species after species learned the truth about their history. Rebellions were breaking out on dozens of worlds, and Council forces were being overwhelmed by enemies they had never expected to face. The quantum communication network that Dr. Elizabeth Reeves had built became the backbone of the Galactic Revolution. Resistance groups could coordinate their actions instantly across interstellar distances. Human military advisors shared tactical knowledge with alien fighters who had never experienced modern warfare. Most importantly, the network allowed proof of Council crimes to spread faster than the aliens could suppress it. Captain Amy Rodriguez led a joint human and Vegan fleet to liberate the Altarian prison world. The survivors of that once proud warrior race had been working in forced labor camps for 10 years, believing their homeworld and fleet had been destroyed. When they learned the truth about the Council's deception, their rage became a weapon more powerful than any human technology. The Council's remaining forces found themselves facing enemies they had never prepared to fight. Human adaptive weapons were being copied and improved by species with their own technological specialties. Vegan scientists created stealth fields that were invisible to Council sensors. Altarian engineers designed armor that could regenerate after taking damage. The scattered resistance movements were sharing knowledge and creating weapons the Council had never encountered. General Paul Henderson established the Liberation Command Center in an abandoned mining station in the asteroid belt. Representatives from 43 species gathered to coordinate their efforts against the Council. For the first time in galactic history, different races were working together as equals rather than as rulers and subjects. Dr. Nathan Cross found himself leading a research team that included some of the most brilliant minds from across the galaxy. Fourth-hand scientists brought knowledge preserved from before the Council's rise to power. Former Council species shared intelligence about alien weaknesses and tactics. The combination of human adaptability with alien expertise was producing advances that no single species could achieve alone. The Council's attempts to regain control failed at every turn. Their fleets were designed to fight individual species using predictable tactics. They had no experience dealing with coordinated multi-species attacks that used constantly evolving technology. Every battle taught the rebels something new, while the Council remained trapped by centuries of rigid thinking. Captain Ryan Blake's stealth ships had infiltrated the Council's core systems and were broadcasting evidence of alien crimes directly to their own populations. Even the Council species themselves were learning the truth about what their governments had done in their names. Internal rebellions began breaking out as citizens demanded answers about the systematic genocide their leaders had committed. The most devastating blow to Council authority came when 3 of their member species announced their withdrawal from the alliance. The hegemony of Kree declared that they would no longer participate in the oppression of other worlds. The crystal mines of Xerion revealed that they had been secretly helping resistance movements for decades. The machine intelligence of Voss simply stated that continued Council membership was no longer logical given the changing galactic situation. Within 3 months of humanity's initial victory, half the galaxy was in open revolt against Council rule. The alien overlords, who had maintained peace through fear and intimidation, found themselves facing an enemy that grew stronger with every battle. Their greatest mistake had been believing that control was more important than adaptation. President Johnson received daily reports about the revolution spreading across the galaxy. Worlds that had been silent under council rule for centuries were suddenly declaring independence. Species that had forgotten their own histories were rediscovering their heritage and rebuilding their civilizations. The rigid order that the council had imposed was giving way to something chaotic, but alive with possibility. Admiral Lisa Carter commanded the combined Liberation Fleet as it moved from system to system, freeing worlds from council control. Her ships carried not just weapons but also teachers and engineers who helped newly liberated species rebuild their societies. The humans had learned that true victory meant more than just winning battles. It meant giving others the tools to remain free. The galaxy was transforming from a place where ancient powers controlled every aspect of life into something unpredictable and dangerous and wonderful. Species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to work together. Technologies that had been suppressed for centuries were being rediscovered and improved. Most importantly, beings across the galaxy were remembering what it felt like to dream of a better future. The Council's age of dominance was ending not with a final battle, but with the slow realization that their way of thinking belonged to the past. The future belonged to species that could adapt and change and grow together rather than trying to control each other through fear. 1 year after the failed ultimatum that changed galactic history, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Terra Nova and watched the signing ceremony that would establish a new order among the stars. The Terran Accords represented more than just a peace treaty. They were a promise that no single power would ever again control the destiny of entire species. The ceremony took place in space at the neutral point between Earth and the Vorthon home system. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered to witness humanity's transformation, from galactic outcasts to the guarantors of freedom for any world that chose to leave council authority. Jake remembered the fear he had felt just 12 months ago when the council fleet first appeared near Earth's moon. Now those same alien ships served as monuments to humanity's victory orbiting Earth, as museums where visitors could learn about the day everything changed. The massive vessels that had once inspired terror now taught children from dozens of species about the importance of never giving up hope. The Galactic Council itself had ceased to exist 6 months earlier, when the last of its member species abandoned the alliance rather than face the growing revolution. The hegemony of Kree had become humanity's strongest ally, after revealing that they had been secretly opposing council policies for decades. The crystal mines of Zerion provided advanced computer technology that enhanced the quantum communication network. Even former council species were working to build something better than the empire they had helped destroy. Dr. Nathan Cross continued his research from a new laboratory built jointly by human and Vorthon engineers. The adaptive weapons that had broken council power were now being refined for peaceful purposes. Medical devices that could adjust their treatment based on patient response. Manufacturing systems that optimized themselves for different materials and conditions. Construction robots that modified their design as they built to account for local environmental factors. The combination of human innovation with alien knowledge had created advances that neither could have achieved alone. Vorthon scientists brought theoretical knowledge preserved from before the Council's rise to power. Human engineers contributed practical experience with rapid adaptation and problem-solving. Together, they were developing technologies that pushed the boundaries of what anyone had thought possible. Captain Lisa Carter led the new Terra fleet on patrol missions throughout former Council space. Her combined force of human ships and allied alien vessels maintained peace not through intimidation, but through the promise of protection for any species that wanted to remain free. The fleet's mission was to ensure that no other empire could rise to oppress the galaxy's newly independent worlds. The most profound change was not technological, but philosophical. Humanity had proven that rapid adaptation and willingness to take incredible risks could overcome seemingly impossible odds. Across the galaxy, species that had accepted limitation and control for centuries began pushing their own boundaries and exploring possibilities they had never dared consider. The Vegan people who had surrendered without resistance 20 years earlier were now building the fastest ships in the galaxy. Their new fleet used stealth technology that made them nearly impossible to detect, even by human sensors. The Altarian survivors had rebuilt their civilization with a focus on defensive systems that could protect any world from invasion. Species after species was discovering capabilities they had never known they possessed. Earth became more than humanity's homeworld. It became a symbol of what was possible when beings refused to accept that anything was impossible. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to visit the planet where the revolution began. They studied human history and culture, trying to understand what made this species different from all the others. President Caroline Johnson established the Institute for Galactic Freedom on Earth, where representatives from every liberated species could meet and share knowledge. The Institute became the center of learning and cooperation that the Council had never allowed to exist. Scientists worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Historians reconstructed the true story of galactic civilization, free from Council propaganda. Artists and writers created works that celebrated the diversity of life throughout the stars. The quantum communication network that Dr. Elizabeth Reeves had built grew into something far beyond its original purpose. It connected not just military forces but entire civilizations, allowing instant communication and cultural exchange across the galaxy. Children on Earth could talk in real time with their counterparts on worlds hundreds of light years away. Scientists could collaborate on experiments that spanned multiple star systems. The network broke down the isolation that the Council had used to maintain control. Colonel Marcus Thompson worked with former resistance leaders to establish the Galactic Defense Alliance. This was not an empire or controlling authority, but a mutual protection agreement between free species. Any world that came under attack could call for help and receive immediate assistance from alliance members. The system ensured that no single species would ever again face annihilation alone. The most remarkable development was the return of the Ancients, a mysterious race that had withdrawn from galactic affairs millennia ago. These beings had been watching the Council's reign with disapproval, but had chosen not to interfere directly. Humanity's victory convinced them that younger species had finally matured enough to deserve guidance rather than control. "You have proven something we thought impossible," the ancient representative told President Johnson during their first meeting. "You showed that growth and adaptation are more powerful than stagnation and control. We withdraw not because we fear you, but because you no longer need our protection." The Council's former core worlds had become isolated enclaves where the remaining alien leadership struggled to maintain order among populations that increasingly demanded change. Some of these worlds eventually reached out to the Alliance asking for help in transitioning to more democratic forms of government. Others remained closed and suspicious but posed no threat to the galactic community. 10 years after the day humanity struck back, former High Arbiter Zex-9 lived in comfortable exile on a peaceful agricultural world far from the centers of galactic civilization. The crystalline alien had spent his remaining years writing memoirs that tried to explain how the supposedly invincible Council had fallen to a species they had dismissed as primitive. "Our greatest error was believing that strength came from the ability to control others," Zex-9 wrote in his final entry. "The humans showed us that true strength comes from the ability to adapt and grow and change. We tried to freeze the galaxy in a pattern that served our purposes. They taught the galaxy to dream again. The dreams were becoming reality as species, after species discovered their potential when freed from artificial limitations. New civilizations emerged from worlds that had been barren under Council rule. Technologies thought impossible became commonplace as different species shared their knowledge freely. Art and music and literature flourished as beings expressed ideas that had been suppressed for centuries. Captain Amy Rodriguez commanded the deep space exploration fleet that pushed beyond the galaxy's edge, searching for new worlds and new forms of life. Her ships carried the message of freedom to species that had never heard of Earth or the Council. Some of these encounters led to new alliances and expanded knowledge. Others resulted in conflicts that tested humanity's commitment to protecting the weak from the strong. The galaxy had become a place of infinite possibility rather than rigid control. Species that had been enemies learned to work together. Technologies that had been forbidden were developed openly. Most importantly, young beings across the galaxy grew up believing that they could achieve anything if they were willing to work, and learn and adapt. And in the depths of space where new civilizations were just beginning to reach for the stars, explorers from Earth carried a simple message to anyone who would listen. The message was written in hundreds of languages on the hull of every human ship so that all could understand its meaning. Today we strike back. Tomorrow we reach for infinity.